Holy God, thank you, my Lord, that we can once again come together on this beautiful Sabbath day, that we can discuss relationships. Lord, help us and let us talk together to understand what you want in this day and this time for our relationships. I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. I just want to, there's something wrong with my computer. Just 1 second. When we started this discussions, we made a list. We included roles and responsibilities. We included the right to speak, privacy, open communication, know your partner, conflict, inner dialogue, finances. We started with quite a huge subtitles. And the one I want to talk tonight about is inner dialogue. Now, when we look at inner dialogue, I'll have a build up and try to explain what inner dialogue is, but it's a much bigger study than what I can do for tonight, because it will influence so many things. But I'll just want to start, and I want to look at what we've done, because it's a build up to this one, what we've done in the previous ones. So I want to do a recap. I just want to make sure from you guys that I am audible, because it's difficult to hear if you guys can hear me clearly. Can anybody just give me indication that I'm audible?
Loud and good.
Yes, you're good.
Thanks, Lucky. Okay. I want to just recap. We started with individuality, and it is so important. I can't overemphasize this one. Individuality before a relationship is crucial. We went through this and we look at the reasons, and we want to understand what happens here. You can't just put two people together and see if it will work. There's a combination of factors that we need to consider and carefully weigh in a balance to make sure if you want two people in a relationship that it will work. A lot of people say, yeah, you need each one, it's a 50-50 that you need to put in the relationship. I say no. It's 100% and 100% that we need to put into a relationship. We also looked at, the next time we looked at equality. And what's so important about equality is we saw that once we look at equality, we had to make sure that both people are standing on the same platform before they go into a relationship. So that is when we looked at its movement to movement relationships, Levite to Levite, Nethinim to Nethinim. And we've dealt with so many cases where somebody from the movement get involved with somebody outside the movement. And we look at this and we see that it's inequality from the beginning. And the end of the day is you can't take those two people and think we're together now and these things will sort themselves out. You're starting with a disadvantage, and that will just grow bigger and bigger and bigger. What we've also did is when we look at equality, we also look at inequality. And Erika discussed a few things there. She should look at age difference, to also look at if there is children before you go into a relationship. And she took certain examples and certain things to discuss inequality. Now, that is very important to understand. Now, when we look at equality, I looked at the definition, and this was the definition, and this is just something I looked at that was appropriate for the discussion that we had, and I think it's still appropriate. And we came up with this. Equality in a relationship does not mean uniformity, but rather it means that you both give each other the freedom to be who you are while growing together. And that was critical to understand. Sometimes people think when you enter into a relationship, then that uniformity must be there. That means, and usually what happens is the woman usually get lost in this relationship because she has to give up her dreams. She now starts to become the person that do the housework, the household. She's taking care of the babies. She does all these things, and you will see sometimes what happened is that the woman starts to focus her energy and her whole world according to the dreams and the things of the man. She starts to focus and starts going in that direction to assist him, and everything was revolved around the man. He was the one that's going out after the work and after the dreams, and wherever he goes, she just goes with. And she lost the identity. She actually had to take up some form of his identity and walk with him. And we saw this is absolutely not what God intended. So we look at this whole thing between individuality, and then we also look at equality. So what I want to talk about today is inner dialogue. Now, this is something we can talk together, but I just want to give you still a background what I'm talking about. And this one is a tricky one because all of us has got this thing, and it can be a positive or a negative thing. Let me just read some things to get a background of what that means. In so many situations, we try to talk with ourselves, consciously or subconsciously, while analyzing different life situations, incidents, or people. This conversation with ourselves is understood as internal dialogue. Now, what makes this a very interesting subject is that before there is an action, and Erika said it as well, there's a thought. Now, if we go back to Genesis, I'm still building up to try to paint a picture of what this is all about that I'm trying to talk about. Genesis 3 verse 4. We will see the serpent comes to Eve. And what he does is, he's actually telling her something. And he says to her, this is the whole story about eating the fruits. And he says, you shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day that you eat thereof, your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as gods, knowing good from evil. So the serpent is telling Eve a story. Now, look what she's doing. And this is verse 6 of Genesis 3, verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, gave also to her husband with her, and he did eat. We know that she had the lust, she looked at it, and you must understand that these words of Satan ring in her head. Now, with the inner dialogue, what happens is you start a conversation with yourself. You will change words. For instance, what Eve did is God said something and Satan said something. And in her mind, these things go around and she has to make a decision. And the end of the day, I just want to see if I can mute. No, I've lost that. Just mute your mics, please. Somebody's mic is on the. I'll appreciate. But what's interesting is there's a process that happens in the mind. Now, I want to go and give an example of internal dialogue. I want to give 2 examples. And what I will do is here, I first want to explain as well, as you grow up, there's factors that will influence the way that you think about yourself, the way that you look at other people. There can be a lot of negative things during your life that will have an influence. And this specific example I will give, it's more about how do you perceive yourself? Because what will happen is this. Let's say that there is a woman and she has bought a new dress. So now she goes into that little room and she's putting on this dress. And after she's put on the dress, she's looking in the mirrors. And while she's looking in the mirror, this inner dialogue starts in her mind. So now she's going to do things. She's looking at the dress, but what happens now? She will look and say, and this is now about self-confidence and how she's also looking at herself and understand. She will start looking at herself now and forget the dress and say, I'm not beautiful. I don't look like this and this actress. Maybe I'm fat. Maybe this, maybe that. So what she does is she starts an inner dialogue with herself on all the negative things and how she perceived herself. And at the end of the day, she looks in the mirror and that inner dialogue make her and start convincing her of certain things. So she starts forgetting, or not forgetting, she doesn't look realistic to how the dress is sitting, but she's actually seeing things about herself, things she's not happy with herself. This is one example. I'll explain to you why it's so important to understand this. And I want to give you another example. This might be a stupid example, but you will see this is how the brain works and this is what we do. This is just a story. There was a person who was driving at night, a very lonely dirt road, out of town, and he got a flat tire. So he climbed out to change the tire, but he noticed that he left the wheel spanner at home. So not knowing what to do, his phone has got no reception. So now he's looking at ideas, and he sees there far in the distance, he sees there's a light. There's a house with a light on. So he makes a decision and said, I'm going to walk over to this house. I'm going to knock on the door and I'm going to ask the guys if I can borrow the wheel spanner so I can change my tire. So as he is walking, and it's quite a long distance, now he's walking to this house. And this inner dialogue, this inner conversation is starting in his mind. So this is what's going through his mind now. He thinks to himself, what if these people are sleeping and don't want to open the door when I knock at the door? Because it is quite late. So he goes on and he thinks, what if these guys don't want to borrow me their wheel spanner, thinking I'm going to run off with the wheel spanner? What if this guy's asked me money for the wheel spinner? What if this guy's this and what if this guy's that? So what he does is he start to make a picture in his mind. He's dialoguing with himself, but this is a negative dialogue as well. So the end of the story is he starts working himself up. His heart is start racing, his blood pressure is going up. He starts getting real agitated with all these ideas that he is creating in his mind of all the possible situations that might happen. And I think you know the outcome of the story. He knocks on the door, and eventually when the people open the door, what will he say? He said, listen, please just take your spanner and keep it. I don't need it. Thank you. Bye. It sounds silly, but let me tell you how many times that is happening to us. We will sit in a conversation, two people, and a dialogue, and you will hear something from your partner, and you will not understand exactly what that person is meaning. So immediately, you will go into a dialogue with yourself, and you will start thinking, what did she just say? What did he just say? And you will start making up something in your mind because you're not sure what they said or you don't understand exactly what it said. So the end of the day, whatever comes into your mind, for you, it becomes a reality. And this is where so many fights and so many things are happening in relationships. And that inner dialogue can happen in many ways. I'm glad I'm sitting in Nelspruit now. I'm with my partner, Erika, and I'm happy. I'm away from work for a week, and we're here. But there's one thing, when we communicate, sometimes we use WhatsApp, and again, I want to tell you, that's probably one of the worst communication platforms there is. Because I can type a word or a sentence, or usually it happens when she types. And when I read that, then sometimes I don't understand the sentence. Instead of asking what she meant, what happens to my mind? And it happens a lot to me, and I'm struggling with this, is I'm going into an inner dialogue. And there's three things that usually happens, and that's quite interesting if you do a study. The first thing that happens is, depending on your way that you see yourself, the first thing is, if your self-confidence is low, immediately you will think it's something about me. It's something that I did. Why is she sounds moody tonight. She sounds cross. What did I do? What did I say? And that inner dialogue goes around self. This is one way that it does. Another way that it happens is, instead of that confidence or low confidence, you can have a high confidence. And usually those thoughts are negative towards that other person. That means you have a conversation, your partner sounds aggressive or angry, or you just pick up a mood. And immediately you will think, what's wrong with her? What's wrong with him? Why is he angry? Why is he saying this like that? What is the problem? And it's all negative things. And in your mind, you make it real. The third thing also, and this happens more on WhatsApp and when you're writing stuff, but it can also happen when you just have a conversation, is, for instance, I'll take an example, and this is a real example, where a person can write, and I'm going to use the example between a man and a woman, where a man writes to a woman and said, I want to courtship you. And the answer of that woman is a simple one word, no. Now, in a dialogue we found, and it happens with a lot of men, and we've seen that in cases of abuse as well, that person starts an inner dialogue because he can't accept that word no. So what does he do in his mind? He starts an inner dialogue, and now that no in his mind becomes maybe, or not now, or no, and it doesn't mean to him what she means. She means, no, not at all. Leave me out. I'm not interested in. But what he does is he put emotions and he puts things there that is not there. He reads his own feelings in his own mind in that situation. He doesn't accept what is standing there, and he changes it around in his mind. And to him it becomes real that no is not no. That no is maybe or later or not really, or it's just a bad time. So he uses that inner dialogue and he changes that. When we look at relationships, it is so important to understand that this is happening all the time. I've spoken to many people, and I can tell you in my life, and while I was preparing this, your mindset goes into a certain direction. And when you get a communication from somebody, you're on a different, what is the right word, place from where that person is. And sometimes we perceive these things wrong, and the mind starts running, and you start with that inner dialogue, and you start confusing yourself with what the other person has said. And you start making things up in your mind, and this really start to create problems. So this is the whole thing about inner dialogue. I don't know if you guys got examples and you guys understand what I'm trying to say. Give me some feedback from you guys, please. Milton, I'm picking on you. Are you still in there?
Kobus.
Yes, Lucky.
No, what I'm thinking while you're still talking, I'm thinking about Lucifer in heaven. Isn't this the thoughts or the inner dialogue that was going on in his mind that led him to his fall?
I also think so. You see, what happened is in heaven, as I understand it, is, remember, they didn't understand the role of Christ. They saw Jesus as Michael, the head of the angel. And when God said, I'm going to use Jesus to create earth and those things, I believe that inner dialogue with Satan, he had all these questions. Why him? Why not me? Why this? And he starts with all those things. And the problem is, same with Eve. Once you start this inner dialogue, it becomes reality for you. You make decisions now based on things that you have actually created in your mind. It's not there. So many times we can, and I know on WhatsApp it happens a lot. You write something and your intentions are not there, but the other person or yourself picks up those words, and now you're adding emotions there. Because now it looks to you, this is one way. And now your inner mind starts working and you start looking at these words. But now you're adding emotions, you're adding things there that's not there. And now it becomes a problem. And we do it all the time, even with conversations. And I know also what happens with relationships. And this is also what I experience in my own, is we pick up any feelings or emotions from the other person, and immediately the mind goes into overdrive, and you start that inner conversation too, and now you're thinking, why is that person not happy? What did I say? What? And you can go so many places in your mind with that. And lucky, this is also what I found is that instead of just saying stop, ask the person what they meant, or ask the person a straight question. If your relationship is right and up to standard, then you will have a communication where you can be honest and open and declare what is going on. So you don't have to guess and have to do this. And it is so important because we do it all the time. I don't know if somebody else that wants to say something as well, because this is really something that we can make a big study out of this. I just want to give you a little bit of background and see how it works, and how inner dialogue works. There's many ways to counteract this, and one of the things is that I've learned is listen to the person. That's point number one. Sometimes what we do is we don't listen. The partners tell something, or somebody tells something, and you don't listen. You actually start making up your own idea of what that person is saying. And this is the first thing. Just stop and listen. Point number two, what's interesting is it's understand what the person is saying. Because a lot of times we misunderstand each other and we don't clarify it. We're running again in our heads. It's as easy as asking the person to say, explain to me, what did you say there? The third thing is to help that I understand as well is don't put emotions there that's not there. This is something that we love to do, is we put an emotion there and we assume and start going in our dialogue with ourselves, and we start putting emotions there. We start putting feelings in there that's not in there, and we're creating a problem that sometimes we're not there, or we misguiding this whole thing. A fourth point that I see that is very helpful is always give them the benefit of the doubt. Because sometimes what we do is if we don't understand or we're going in the direction, we usually think the worst. Instead of giving that person the benefit of the doubt to say, I don't think this is what the person meant. I don't think he was aggressive or she was aggressive. I don't think this one meant this. I think give them the benefit of the doubt. You'll find out, I think, more than 90% that it's your feelings that's a problem. It's the way that you perceived it. It's not how that person has put it there. And don't act. That's point number 5. Don't act on things in your mind. Just make sure things are real. Because sometimes what we do is we build up this whole conversation. We make up all these ideas. At the end of the day, we're actually acting on our own impulses, on our own thoughts. And it's not acting on what the person has said or what the person is doing. We're actually acting on that impulses and that conversation that we have created in our minds. And then the last one is rather act on grace. That means make sure if you do an action, let it be the mildest, best action that you can do. And this is not an easy thing to do, but it's something that we can teach each other and that we can learn. Milton, are you back now? No, he's trying to get in still. Anyone wants to add something? Or share with us? Because when we look at communications, and we look at relationships, we know that that inner dialogue creates a lot of tension and a lot of problems. So I would like if somebody can share some of their experiences on this. Anybody? Am I still audible?
Yeah, you're still audible, Kobus.
Who's speaking now? Is it you, Lucky?
Yeah, it's lucky, yes.
Okay.
No, what I can say, what I can say with these inner dialogues, in my experiences, because it works everywhere. It doesn't have to be your partner or your wife. You always you are always perceiving someone wrong. Most of the time, you are always wrong. That's what I've noticed. You are always wrong. I mean, most of the time. That's what I've noticed. That's what I can say.
It's the same experience that I have. It's most of the time we are wrong. Um, what's interesting, and I will share this, is while I was busy with this study, Erika sent me a video clip. Uh, and now what is interesting is, remember, I'm busy with the study, I'm busy with this mindset, and she sends me this video clip where they're talking about uh, the the man and the woman relationship, but don't want to go into detail there. But remember now what my mind does. It's like you say, Lucky. Immediately, I've got questions. Why did she send it to me now? Does she want to tell me something through this video? Because this man doesn't see the picture correctly. Are she insinuating it's me? Is it so? It's so quickly that the mind goes into the wrong direction, and immediately I've got a whole wrong perception. And then when we talk about it, immediately I find out that wait a minute, there was no intentions behind that. There was something she wants to show me. What is? Hmm? Yeah, and she wants to introduce me to this guy that's got a lot of these equality issues and sexist issues. He's got it quite correct. And she wants to introduce me. So her reasons why she sent it to me differs totally from how I perceived it. And this is usually where problems begin, with misunderstandings. Because immediately I went into a total different direction. And I actually talked to Erika and said, listen, while I'm actually busy preparing this whole thing about inner dialogue, you find out it's happening even at that moment, that your mind goes into a total different direction. And that's why when we're going to discuss communication between people or in a relationship, sometimes people think communication is just talking to each other. That's a total perception or way to look at communication. Communication is there for a reason. There's certain information that we need to get from each other. There's certain truths that we need to get from each other. We'll go through that whole study. It's not just communicating, meaning talking to each other, sharing words and things like that. It's about making sure we understand each other with intent and all those things, because usually it's the intent that we are missing. And this is the problem. Now, I want to end with looking at the Midnight Cry message. Now, what is so beautiful about this is, even when you look at relationships, you look at individuality, you look at inner dialogue, all the things, equality that we're looking at, and we look at relationships, we found out that what the Midnight Cry message is doing, if you look at it in its fullness, it's really confronting each and every one of us. And it's confronting you in all the ways that is possible. This is a tool that God has made that will produce his people, that will do the work that needs to be done. And there's two things that will happen. As we go through these studies, look at even what Erika presents as the LGBTQ, transgender, and those things. When you look at that and where we come from, we had a certain point of view, we had a certain way that we look at that, and for myself, I was totally wrong. So now this message comes and it confronts me. I have to struggle with myself. I have to go and look in the mirror. I have to talk to myself. I need to work this out, because God needs us to go and look in the mirror, each one of us, and we need to work on each one of these subjects. And we need to do extensive studies, and we need to understand that because it's confronting us. Two things will happen. You will either change or you will leave it. And we need to understand, to be part of this movement, the requirement is to be a radical feminist. I don't think we all understand what radical feminism is. And I think we as men got even a bigger problem, because where do we fit into this whole story? And what is our duties as a radical feminist? Because one of the basic things that we need to do as a radical feminist is to break down the patriarchal system and take it out with roots and all. And we need to understand, again, I'm pointing fingers back to our men, that we are the problem. And the problem is that we don't see that we are the problem. We're sitting and that inner dialogue shows fingers to all other people except to yourself. And again, we're sitting with the problem. So if we look at relationships, we are already unequal, because we got a mindset as men that's different, that's not right, and we need to change that. So we need to study and look at every little thing about equality, every little thing about relationships, every little thing about all these subjects that are presented all around the world. And we need to spend time with that, because it has to confront us. We have to break down our ideas. We have to get these things root and all out. Otherwise, we're going to just go slowly but surely back, and we're going to fall into the same pitfalls and the same things over and over again. We're not going to pass this test. And when we look at relationships, it's the same that we want to do, is we just want to agitate certain things so that we can all think and start breaking all these ideas down and look at them from different views and from different perspectives and whatever, especially with this inner dialogue. I've just mentioned it today, but it's important for us to go back and see how big this issue is. Because with my upbringings, I've been taught certain things. I've been abused in certain ways. And all these things comes together and it forms a character, a thinking, and a processing idea. And that will carry over with that inner dialogue. And like Lucky says, and I found it the same, and you can do studies, most of the time we are wrong about how we perceive people, how we think about people, and what their intentions are. And it's most of the time also negative. And you will see it will have a negative impact on your life, how you perceive yourself, and also how you perceive your partner or other people, and it will have a negative influence in your relationship. And there's ways that we can counteract the way that we are thinking and working in our minds. And it's important to understand these issues. So I've just touched the bottom, but there's much more to this than we think, because it's something that constantly are there in our minds, and it will constantly create problems between people. And this is not an easy subject, but it's something that I just want to make you guys aware of. And then we can talk all more and more and bring more things to the table, because this is a subject that people usually don't talk about. It's something people don't even realize, but it's creating huge, huge, huge problems. And the more we will study this, the more we will see actually how deep it runs and where it comes from, because it's embedded in culture, it's embedded in many other things. And we haven't done a proper work to take culture out of our lives, to take all the other ideas. Like Alan White says, there's more things that we need to unlearn than what we need to learn. And I think that process, and I found it in myself, as somewhere along the line, I stopped that. I didn't go on with that. So every time we need to remind each other to say, go back and investigate yourself and make sure all these things, root and all, have been taken out of your life. To end up with this, if we go back to LGBTQ and we look at some of these studies, we need to understand persecution is already on them. It's already happening with them. And it's worldwide. And you will see the laws and the things are mostly now concentrated on the LGBTQ groups. Now, for us to understand what equality is, radical feminists, and what we're going to expect in the Sunday law as such that's coming, is we're going to stand up against the lawmakers, against the people. We're also going to stand in between the people that persecute them. I don't know how it will look like and how it will manifest, but one thing that I do know is, and Ellen White explained in her time when the Sunday law was coming, she said there's people that will understand the Sabbath. They know what to do, but when the test comes, they will fail. They will not be able to do it because they didn't have the experience. They didn't go through the motions. They didn't have the love. There's a lot of things she explains there. So it's the same now with the Sunday law that's coming. If we don't love these people, really love, you cannot stand up for them. You cannot defend them. You cannot defend even your own message. Because we say it's not sin. We say that is not a choice. That's who they are. And if we still look at them in disgust, and if we still don't understand them correctly, and we still go to all the other channels and we look at all this information and we start believing improper or misinformation, we have to be careful because it's all stumbling blocks. That means we have to be careful wherever we get information from. And this is the same with relationships, and I want to end with that. It's easy to go to a worldly thing and just look at relationships and think, it's fine, we'll make it, we'll work it out somehow. We'll be fine. Let's start this relationship, and as we go along, we'll sort things out. And this is a common understanding, but it's a common myth as well. It doesn't work that way. And this is the only thing that I want to do tonight, is just agitate people to say, go back, understand what Elder Palmander has done in all his studies, starting with the nature of man, going through all his other studies. Understand why it is important what we can do and not do, because it's a protection for ourselves and it's a protection for God's people. So this is about all that I want to do. So please, if there's anyone that will add or say anything, please feel free. Okay. What I will do now is I will just end with prayer, and then I will give back to Shami. So let's close our eyes. Holy God, there's so many things I want to say, but I'm tripping over my own words. Help us to go back to your message, to your beautiful truth, Lord, because this is the antidote for all our problems. Help us with that, my Lord, please. Be with us also in this festive season, and keep our minds occupied and our thoughts occupied with beautiful things, Lord. Help us also with inner dialogue, where we know it can be destructive and negative. It creates a lot of problems. Let us each go and study and talk to each other and understand this better, and let it make an influence in our lives. I thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.